In this video, we're going to discuss the scientific method. Now, the scientific method is just a way for you to go from something that is a problem or a question, from something that you observed, to coming up with some sort of solution and a conclusion about that answer. So there are 6 basic steps: observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, collect and analyze data, and a conclusion. Observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, collect and analyze data, and a conclusion. Now, the first step, observation, we get as humans from using our senses. So actually, many organisms get their observations of the world using their senses. And in our case, it's going to be our hearing and our sight and our taste and our smell and our touch. So we collect this information about the world using our 5 senses. So at some point in time, you have made some sort of observation about the world. It could be, hey, the sky is blue, the grass is green, the tree leaves are falling. Whatever it might be, you have made an observation for. Then you come up with a question about that. So a question is some sort of request of information or something to be solved. So you're trying to find out about this. So if you're taking the example, the sky is blue, as the observation, you might say, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Etc. Then you go to the third step, the hypothesis. Now, the hypothesis is really an educated guess. It is an actual answer to your question, but it's an educated answer to your question, just not any random answer. It's an educated answer, something that has some thought put into it and some knowledge behind it. So, hypothesis is an educated guess or problem solution to a question or problem, usually in an if-then statement. An educated guess or problem solution to a question or problem, and it's usually in an if-then statement. So I'm going to use this if-then statement in an example toward the end of this slide presentation. Next, we come up with experiment, which is the 4th step in the process, and it is an organized process to test a hypothesis. So you are coming up with a way to test your if-then statement of your hypothesis. Next, we're going to collect and analyze our data from our experiment. And so when we collect and analyze our data from an experiment, we are going to be able to have it either in 2 forms, a qualitative data form or a quantitative data form. So our experimental measurements that were recorded, and we're going to eventually examine them. We collected them, and now we're going to analyze them. The qualitative data is usually in a description form. It's like blue or heavy, light, whatever type of description that you want to use. Bitter, sour, any of these types of descriptions. Now, quantitative data is just numbers. Oh, there are 6 flies. It was traveling at 30 miles per hour. Whatever you have, it is some sort of number. And lastly, we conclude about our hypothesis. So you're making a conclusion based upon whether the data supports or refutes your hypothesis. So it is basically a judgment of the hypothesis. So it's a judgment right here of the hypothesis. So we're checking back on our educated guess to find out if this is the correct answer. So I'm going to show you a quick example of how to use the scientific method. For this example, we have a flashlight. Here is the flashlight. He's looking at his flashlight and says, hey, my flashlight doesn't work. That's an observation. He saw that his flashlight doesn't work. So then he comes up with a question. What's wrong with the flashlight? You could say, Why is my flashlight not working? Well, then he comes up with an educated guess. His educated guess is the batteries are dead. The batteries no longer have enough energy to light this flashlight. So my educated guess, my hypothesis, is the batteries are dead. Now, we mentioned this if-then statement. The if-then statement then would be, if the batteries are dead and you replace them with new ones, then the flashlight will work. So our if is the if they are dead and we replace them, then your flashlight will work. So this is what we're going to test. So his experiment or his test is going to be replace the batteries. Now, he's going to go in one of two directions. If he goes on this side and he tries to light the flashlight and it does not work, the test does not support his hypothesis, then he poses a new one. So if the batteries are dead and you replace them with new ones, the flashlight will work. If he replaces them and it does not work, then he goes back and changes his hypothesis. However, if the batteries are dead and he replaces them and he finds out that it does work, the test supports the hypothesis, then it supports the hypothesis that his batteries were dead and his problem is solved. So that's basically the idea when it comes to the scientific method. And that is observation. You see, smell, taste, touch, hear something in the world, you question about it, you come up with a hypothesis or educated guess that answers your question. Then you put it in if-then format. If this happens, then this happens. And if-then statements can be tested through experimentation. From experimentation, you gather some sort of data that could be qualitative or quantitative data, something that's a description or something that's in a number form. And then you analyze that information and come up with your judgment, which is your conclusion. But remember that judgment or conclusion is all about your hypothesis. If it supports your hypothesis, then you could be done at this point. If it does not support your hypothesis, then what you should do is go back and rethink your hypothesis and try to test a different hypothesis. I hope that helps you understand the scientific method a little better, and we'll talk more about this in class.